Welcome to today's lesson on methods for solving a quadratic using the quadratic formula. Now the number one thing is we need to remember that our quadratic formula is x equals minus b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So if I'm going to be solving a quadratic, this is the method that I would be using. Right? So if I would have a quadratic equation such as 3x squared plus 7x minus 8 is equal to 14. In this instance, now I want to solve this. Right? So again, we want to get it in solving form. The way that we do that is by getting it equal to 0. So I'm going to add a negative 14 to both sides, so I get 3x squared plus 7x plus a negative 22 is equal to 0. Now we can clearly see in this instance that the completing the square method will not work, because here we have 7x, and having 7x it not being even and it being odd will make a lot of fractions that we would have in this instance and make it harder to use completing the square, even though a method still could be used possibly. But here in the front we don't have a perfect square term either, so it can make it even more difficult. But in this instance we're going to go with using the quadratic formula. Now the first thing we need to do is get our a, our b, and our c. Now our a is always the number that's in front here of the x squared term, our b is in front of the x, and our c is the constant negative 22 here. So my a is 3, my b is 7, and my c is negative 22. So now I'm going to plug it into my quadratic formula. So I have minus b, so minus 7, plus or minus square root of 7 squared minus 4 times a, which is 3, times c, which is negative 22. And we're going to have that all over 2 times 3. So now we have to go with our order of operations and solve this. So I have x equals negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 49 plus a negative 4 times 3 times negative 22 all over 6. X equals negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 49, and negative 4 times 3 is negative 12, and negative 12 times 22, or negative 22, right, we have 4 and 4, 0, 2, 2, 264. Right, so we have 264 over 6. So I have x equals negative 7 plus or minus, and 49 plus 264 is 313. 313 over 6. So now 313, if we could simplify that down, we would. Right, in this instance there aren't any values that I can get, so this would be our final answer unless we had a calculator. If we had a calculator we could take it further than this, because we could find the square root of 313. Here in this instance I don't have a calculator, and our exact answer in this radical form is fine. So negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 313 over 6 would be very, very good. Right, so let's do another one. So I have 9x squared plus 13x minus 7 equals 16. Again, our quadratic formula, minus b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So here now we're going to try to solve this. Right, again, our middle term here is not even. So again, using the quadratic formula is going to be better than using the method of completing the square. If it was even, here again we have our 9x squared, which is a perfect square term. So completing the square would be better if this middle term was even, but we can clearly see it's not. So we're going to use our quadratic formula. So again, A, B, and C. So my A is 9, my B is 13, my C is -7. Whoops. Where did I make a mistake? All right. Right? I don't have my A, B, and C. Why? Because I don't have it equal to 0. I don't have it in my quadratic in a solvable form. So the first thing I need to do is I need to put that in solvable form. So I need to add a -16 to both sides. So now I have 9x squared plus 13x plus a -23 is equal to 0. Now that I have it in this form, now I can use the quadratic formula to do this. So I have my A is 9, my B is 13, and my C is -23. So now I plug it in. The opposite of B, so -13, plus or minus the square root of 13 squared plus a -4 times A, which is 9, times C, which is -23, all over 2 times 9. So I get -13 plus or minus square root of 13 squared is 169 plus a -36 times a -23. And I'm not Mr. Paul, so I can't do that in my head. So I'm going to go over here on the side. 36 times 23, 18, 10, 12, and 7, 8, 28. So I get x equals -13 plus or minus the square root of 169 plus 828 all over 18. Right, so 828 plus 169. 828 plus 169 would be 997. Right? 997. Alright, so I get x equals -13 plus or minus the square root of 997 over 18. Now again, once we have this in our radical form, we could leave it like this, or we could try to simplify the square root. Right? Think of numbers that would go into this. Right, if we were to simplify the square root. Now I don't believe that 997 can be taken out, or 9 doesn't go into it evenly. I don't believe there's any other numbers, so we would leave it as this. -13 plus or minus the square root of 997 over 18. Now again, if you had a calculator, you could take it further. Alright, in this instance I don't have a calculator, and on your tests more than likely you will not have a calculator, so that would be your answer in radical form, which is fine. Right, so again, if you need any assistance in this, please see one of your math teachers here at Ashwaubenon High School. They'll be glad to help you.